Having an exceptional relationship with your spouse affects every single aspect of your life and is crucial for experiencing your dream life together. I'm Rob Murgatroyd.
And I'm Kim Murgatroyd. Listen in on our honest, filter-free conversations as we navigate life and business together without killing each other.
You'll learn by osmosis how to transform the friction you feel in your relationship into a purposeful foundation that will allow you to grow together.
Welcome to the Friday Podcast.
Kimberly, I don't know what I'm talking about with this episode, Murgatroyd, so I'm going to shut up. Go.
That's like a dream intro in so many ways. So today is part 2 of how to move to Italy. This is going to be the more logistical component for the person who's, I want to know, how do I do it? Talk to me about the visa. Talk to me about the logistics. Talk to me about how I get my shit there. This is going to be that. Part 1 was more about creating the vision for it, because what we're seeing is, as Rob's blowing up on the ticketakide, as the Italians say when they see him in the street, I see you on the ticketakide, we're getting a lot of questions about, dude, how'd you move to Italy? And what we're seeing in these variations of the questions, and there's literally thousands, and when I say literally, I actually mean literally, and not like Valley Girl literally thousands of comments about how do I move to Italy. And the variations of it fall in one of two buckets. Either it's, how did you make this happen? Meaning, my life is so different from being able to do that. Conceptually, my brain can't even wrap around the idea of moving countries. How did you even do that? And that was what we did in part 1, where we talked about our vision from the moment we decided that someday we'd like to move, and how we walked through our vision process and manifestation, how we literally changed our life from owning a physical business, working 12-hour days in America, to living in Italy with a completely different source of income. That was part 1. Part 2 is the logistical stuff. And I want to say on the outset of this podcast, we have a course on how to move to Italy. The course itself comes in 2 parts. So the first part of the course we are doing with our attorney, who is a genius. He's been featured on CBS Sunday Morning. We call him the Pied Piper of expats. He is the immigration attorney to the stars, basically, and he's incredible. So we're doing this entire course with him. So you will have a legal component of understanding, and then you will have the lifestyle component from Rob and I. So course 1 is from, I think I want to move to Italy, takes you all the way through the visa process, the different visa options, going to the consulate, what that looks like, the application, all of that stuff. It takes you through that process. Course 2 picks up where course 1 leaves off. We hope that you've received your visa, and now it's moving logistics, the legal process once you arrive in Italy, because people think if they get the visa and they land here, it's done. It's not. There's a whole hazarai of legal stuff that has to be done here. Through the getting settled, there's so many things that we didn't realize about the nuances of setting up an entire new life in another country, and we give you all of our shortcuts to that in course 2. So link is in the show notes for the course, and if you have any questions on it, always feel free to reach out. But today we are going to give you some concepts, and we're going to talk about the logistics, and we're going to use kind of our experience along the way. So a few years ago, we decided to move to Italy. We had always had this tucked in the back of our head, as you learned in part 1, and we just didn't know when. And then one day, after we did a kind of a 90-day trial run of living in Florence, we moved to Southern California. And about a year and a half later, we're sitting on the couch and we're watching Stanley Tucci. And he said one line. Do you know the line?
My dad did a sabbatical year in Florence when I was 12, and it changed the course of my life forever.
The moment he said that line, Rob literally paused the TV. He looked at me and he said, "What are we doing? Why aren't we there?" And so I didn't need to hear one other word. I opened my laptop and I started to look for when was the application for the school that we had intended on sending Sophia to someday. When was that due? It was literally due in a week. And Rob then proceeded to call our attorney, and the wheels were in motion. And from that moment to the day we moved to Italy was 6 months. And so it was a very compressed time frame. And we've been here for a couple of years now at the recording of this podcast. So we've learned a lot in the process. And I know we can really help and shortcut and clarify for you. So let's first talk about this. What are some things that you think people should know before they move to Italy? Because we've seen people move to Italy. There's two types of people. You either move to Italy and you fall in love and it's the best decision you ever made, or you move to Italy and you're so frustrated that Italy spits you out and you go back to America or wherever you came from fairly quickly. So what do you think some things are, Rob, from your perspective, that people should know before they move to Italy?
Yeah, I'm of the belief that whenever you're about to do something that is very unknown to you, that if you have a clear set of expectations about what you're about to encounter and you've been informed, then you don't get to bitch about it if you've been informed in advance. And so my first piece of advice is don't ask why. There will be a reason every single day. I really want you to hear this if you're thinking about living in Italy. There will be a reason every day, multiple times a day, actually, more likely, where you will go, this makes no sense. Why are they doing it this way? Why do you have to order coffee over here and pay for it over there and get your croissant over there? When you join the gym, why do you have to do this? But when you have to pay a bill, why do you have to? You will have 1,000 reasons. The first inoculation that you need before you get on the plane to come here is don't ask why.
Can I follow that up with don't try to offer a suggestion of how to make it better? Do you remember when Sophia had her first track and field day? So you have this citywide track and field, let's call it tournament, okay? You have American kids from the international school. You have all the different kids from Italy. You got parents. This thing was such a cluster. There were multiple sand pits, let's say, for doing the long jump, but they were only using one. There's an entire track that they're only using 100 meters of. They could have ran multiple races at a time. There were so many things that could have been organized differently that weren't, that one of our friends was like, you can spend your entire life in Italy saying, here's how they could make that more efficient. And why don't they do it this way, and complaining, but it will just lead you to getting on a plane and going home if you do. Do you remember that?
I do. It's actually a really, really good one.
It's a really good one. And that it's going to be everything, Rob, from you in the bistecca. There's a reason that you could not get your steak, the Florentine bistecca, cooked well done. The reason is because it's 5 inches thick and it would take all day to cook it to where you wanted it. But you can't ask why, because it's just how they do it. And the more you try to fight it and the more you try to make things efficient, the more frustrated you will get. So you just got to lean into it because it's two sides of the same coin. My second one is, for every solution, we have a problem. Explain. There are things that just work, but sometimes I think the Italians go, it's too easy. It's too easy. Let's take this system that would be very simple. Like if somebody wants to order a coffee, here's the solution. Just have somebody take the order and you give them your name and then they'll go get what you want. No. That's the solution. Let's create a problem. When you order a cup of coffee, let's have them order it down the street, and then let's have them go around the block to get the cornetto, and then let's have them go to the church to pay for the cup of coffee. So there are things, this is a close cousin to don't ask why, which is for every solution we have a problem. Okay, so there's also, on that same note, there are things that you just have to lean in, and it's like a choose your own adventure. You have to lean in and just go with the flow and find the solution that's going to work. You got to mitigate. So I'm going to give you an example. When you're in Italy, if you're not a resident, first thing is you have to get a visa if you want to stay more than 90 days. And that pretty much applies for US, Canada, Australia, and even the UK now because they're not part of the EU. You get the long stay visa, and we'll go over some visa stuff in a few minutes, but you get the visa, you come here, and maybe you want to rent a car. What are your options? If you're not a resident yet, which you won't be out of the gate, you can't buy a car. If you bring your car, you can't register it because you're not a resident. So you have to do a long-term lease. There's one company, we live in Florence. It's a nationwide company, but they do long-term leases. Who would need a long-term lease? An expat. Pretty much only an expat would need a long-term lease with a car rental company. Don't think of it as leasing a car from a dealership because you have to be a resident to do that. You can't do that if you're not a resident. You also need 2 years of tax returns to be able to lease a car or buy a car with a payment plan from a car dealership. So it's out of the question. But to do a long-term lease with a car rental company, there's one specific company that pretty much everybody uses. This company requires that you have a local Italian credit card, which, wait for it, no expat has. So your target demographic doesn't have a way to pay for the car that you want. And even better, the first time you go to pay for it, you have to buy a membership on Amazon. So you go to a website to rent a car. They make you go to Amazon to buy a voucher, to come back to the website, to put the voucher in. You get through the entire process and you get to the very end and you go put your credit card in after you've already bought the $200 voucher off of Amazon, and it says, you can't do that. You need a local card. And then you go to the bank and you try to get a local card, but that takes a long time. And so by the time you get your local credit card, the voucher has expired that you bought on Amazon. Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
If you do all of that and you get through all those hoops and then you say, okay, I'm going to get the car now, and you ask them to hold the car for you, when you go to pick up the car, they'll say, we want the car. You go, no, I got a thing from Amazon right here that says I got a black Fiat Cinquecento. No, we don't have any more. No, but I have it. It says I have this car. Yeah, but I don't have it now. Why did you tell me? Oh, don't ask why. Okay, got it.
Don't ask why. Or what we did this summer is the car had all the lights on, needing all the maintenance. And so it's free maintenance. You just bring it back. So we brought it back and they said, sure. We said, we're going to America for 2 weeks. We'll leave the car with you. You'll get the maintenance done. We'll come back. We'll get the car. They're like, no problem. We came back and they said, it was Ferragosto. Everybody was closed. We didn't get the service done. And so again, you just don't ask why.
And then there's some practical things that you need to understand, which you probably already know, but you don't realize it until you get here. I'm sure most of you listening to this understand that the Italians, they partake in the siesta in the afternoon, right? If you're down south, it's going to be a much longer siesta, maybe 3 hours. They call it the pausa. And if you're in the cities, even big cities, even Rome, Florence, Venice, they're still going to shut down at lunch, especially the smaller stores, for a couple of hours. It's interesting. I just did a lecture at Florida State University. They wanted me to talk on social media. And we were talking about what are the things that these kids from Florida who moved here to study abroad, what are the things that really hit them? And I think some of these things are really relevant here. This one girl said, I grew up in South Florida and I was only raised in going to Target. That's what I did. So I had a list of things that I needed. I knew I was going to get while I was here. I had like shampoo and I needed some underwear. And she had this big list of things that she would do. And she realized that there is no one store that had all of these things. In fact, she had to find 20 stores, one for shampoo, one for her underwear, one for workout clothes. None of it was the big box world that we're used to. Another one said, I have classes in the morning and I have classes in the late afternoon. So in the early afternoon, it's my time to be able to run around and get things done, except the only window I have, every single thing is closed because it's the pausa. So you have to understand that when you come here, that you're coming into a place where things are literally done differently. There's different operating hours. And even in social settings, like if you go out, we've learned the hard way that you don't ask people what they do. You don't talk to people about business. As an American, when you're sitting down with somebody, it's what kind of work do you do? And what are you working on? And especially if you're an entrepreneur, you get lost in these entrepreneurial conversations. That doesn't exist here. Guys are talking about soccer and girls, and women are talking about, I don't know what women talk about. What do the girls talk about?
We talk about kids, but we talk about a lot of things, but not as much as that. Although, look, the concept of what do you do is, I think, more of an American thing. And if you're not talking about that, like I have a mom's dinner tonight with 10 of my girlfriends. We all have kids. We're going to talk about kids. We're going to talk about what we did over the summer. We're going to talk about that. We're definitely not talking about work.
So those kind of things, you have to be prepared. And then I think you need to be very intentional about the idea of building a community when you come here, because depending on your situation, if you're coming with kids, it's going to be a lot easier because you're going to go to school, you're going to meet moms and dads and that kind of thing. But if you're coming here and you don't have children, you've got to go out of your way to build community. I can't imagine a better place to build community than Italy because all they are is one big community and they want to welcome everybody. But you've got to be willing to be intentional about it. And when you get the message or the text from somebody that you met that says, hey, let's go meet for coffee, when they're asking you, they're not asking you like on the 13th of next month, can we meet at 2:00? They mean, can I meet you in 10 minutes? So you got to learn to say yes to these things because that is how the community rolls in this world.
And the question always comes up, like, how much Italian should you know? And is it really needed? Here's the reality of this. When he's talking about community, if your goal is to connect with an expat community, they're going to, for the most part, speak English. Because most countries that are coming here, Australia, UK, Canada, US, even other countries in Europe, for the most part, they're going to speak English. And so they're going to come, and that will be your expat community. At tonight's dinner, there's a couple of Italians. There's a girl from Brussels. There's a couple of Americans. It's a smorgasbord of global. There's someone from Hong Kong. We have a little bit of everything, but we will speak English because there's people from all over the world. If you are wanting to truly get into the Italian community, you're going to need to know Italian because you can do chit-chat in a cafe. You can chit-chat with a store owner. You can do light chit-chat, probably in Italian or English. Like, I can go to a cafe and I can chit-chat in Italian. They can chit-chat in English. But it happened to me yesterday. I went to our favorite bakery, Leonardo. I was buying gifts for our upcoming Italia group trip. They're coming in 5 days. I was buying gifts, and the woman, she knows me there. She's asking me in Italian how my daughter's doing. I said, she's doing great. She just had karate yesterday. She said, where is she taking karate? And I told her, in general, the piazza. She didn't know where that was. And so she's asking me a question that I didn't understand until later. That was a more specific question about the actual location of this, but it went past my knowledge of Italian. And so we just stared at each other. And I'm like, no capisco. So it prevents me from going out and having deep Italian connections because being able to speak in depth about things other than the weather or like topical, light, easy breezy things, you can't have deep connections without knowing the language. So if this is something you're serious about, moving to Italy, I seriously suggest learning Italian before you come. My recommendation is to do an online course. We will link one in the bio that we love. It's from Davide. He's amazing. We'll link that in the show notes, but also to practice with Duolingo because it lets you type, it lets you speak it, it lets you see it. So you have to read, you have to listen, you have to write, you have to spell. So it does it all. But I highly recommend learning Italian because even if you live in the city center and people speak English, if you want to truly be part of the community, you need to learn Italian.
Yeah, and we'll link up our special Davide link. We'll make sure that the editor puts our link in there because the link that we have will give you a discount. They'll give them a better price. So I want to make sure that we use that link. The next area that we want to consider is the where, right? The city versus the country.
Where do you want to move? People ask a lot of questions. And so what we're talking about today is a lot of the questions we're getting via social media. It's too hard to answer in social media sometimes. So we're answering them on the podcast. So we get a lot of questions about how do you choose where you live? Italy, we talk about this a lot. You go 30 minutes from wherever you are, and it's a completely different world. It's different dialect of language. It's different food. It's different temperature. It's different fashion. If you go in the south, it's louder, more colorful, more fried foods. You go to the north into Milan, it's more fashionable, more elegant, more like Austria and Germany. Sometimes in the food, the Milanese, it's like an Austrian take on a dish. So the food varies, the people vary, the culture varies. So that's the first clue. Like, what type of environment do you want to live in? Do you want the warm south, the mountains of the north, the beach? Do you want the city, the countryside? You have to think through a lot of those things.
Yeah, and I also think that when you think about that, you may think, I don't know if I want to be all the way down south or I don't want to be all the way up north. The country of Italy is so small that you can go from one end of it to the other in no time. It's not like you're not going to have access to going to some place completely different. It is important for you to decide where you want to live for sure, but just know that like pretty much on a weekend, you can be anywhere.
Are you coming with your kids? And so school is a factor. There are tons of international schools, unless you want a local school or a private school. So you have to look at education, and you look at the different schools, then you can determine what area is in the proximity of these schools that is a reasonable distance. Sophia's at an international school. There are kids that travel, I'd say, upwards of an hour to get to school in the morning easily because they live in the countryside. Although it's not many miles away, the roads are very windy and you're not going very fast. And so these are all considerations to take. Are you a city dog or a country dog? Rob and I love walking out our door and being in it, in the cafes, in the restaurants, in the shops, in everything.
Yeah, and we had a friend that was here this weekend, and I asked them, because they're considering moving here someday, and I asked them if they'd live in the city, and they said, no, we don't want to live in the city, but we want to be able to walk into the city. So they'd want to live like on the fringes of Florence, as an example, where you can walk down the hill and be in the city, but they want like more of a backyard. And I think this consideration also has a lot to do with cost of living. So cost of living varies. If you're living in Milan or Rome, it's going to be higher than if you're living in Abruzzo, in a small town. So cost of living, people ask me this all the time. I've never actually statistically looked at this, but I would say that it's a good 25%, maybe 30% less, certainly than we paid in Los Angeles. I don't know if that's accurate. I haven't done the research to know how much Italy is, but I guess it depends on where in America you come from.
We just went back to New Hampshire, and even going to New Hampshire, going to dinner was like, what?
It was remarkable. I could not believe how expensive it was. We were also in New York. I will tell you this, if for no other reason in the world, I could never go back to the U.S. to pay those prices. In a million years, I could not see why it was $12 for a double espresso in a hotel lobby. I get it. It's New York, but it is $1 here to get. The thought of paying $12 just for a cup of coffee was so ridiculous. And then going out to dinner, and our dinners are never more than $100 with a bottle of wine and dessert.
2 days ago, our friends were here and we went out to dinner. And so it was the four. I'm going to give you a good example. This is an average trattoria here. It's an average restaurant. It's not high end. It's not the cheapest. It's right smack in the middle, and it's probably one of our favorites. We had 3 appetizers that we all shared. We each had a main, and we had 2 bottles of wine and 2 bottles of water. Oh, and we had digestives after. Do we have dessert? No, we drank our dessert. We had like a little digestivo after, and maybe some coffee. For the 4 of us, for everything with 2 bottles of wine, remember, 2 bottles of wine, 150 euros. That was our dinner. And that's 4 people.
We go into more of that, but let's get into the meat of this now, which is the big question that everybody is asking all the time is, what visas do I qualify for? Kim's chomping at the bit. Let me say this, and then I'll let you take it from here. There are different types of visas that are available to you. If you're considering doing this, really think through all these different visas and see which one you think perhaps you could qualify for. You might qualify for 1 or 2 of these or none of these. There's no way in this podcast that we're ever going to be able to go in depth. That's the reason why we made a freaking nuclear reactor of a course that covers all of this. And that's the reason why we hired a lawyer to make the course with us to cover all of this. All we're intending to do right now is to give you a thumbnail sketch of roughly what kind of visas there are, just to give you a sample.
So there are many visas, and there are many situations that are super unique that 1% of people would qualify for. And so, yes, these visas exist. And the biggest problem I see right now in social media and these companies and people that promote these specific visas that really only 1% of people are really going to qualify for is it makes you think that you can do it too. So I'll give you an example. There's like a golden visa they talk about. It doesn't really exist. It's an investor visa. Like you're investing a significant amount of money into a corporation or real estate or a startup to be able to get a visa to come here. So we're going to disregard this super 1% high-end visa that people are promoting to make it look easy to move to Italy. It's not.
We're going to give you the bread and butter. If you look around at our friends, these are what they did.
I'm going to give you the macro view because, again, I am not an attorney. I do not want to give legal advice, and I do not want to mess this up. This is why our attorney is handling the visa portion of this course and other courses and things that people sell on this, by the way. It's like random people like me and you that moved here. They're like, here's a course on how to move to Italy, except for the fact there's no legal component, and they bullshit about visas that's not accurate, which is why we partnered with an attorney to do this. So I am telling you in advance, I'm not going into detail on this, but he does in the course. There's a student visa, electoral residency visa. There's multiple kinds of work visas. There's a family visa, and there's citizenship visas. Okay, so I'm giving you super high level. Student visas, people think, oh, I'll just say I want to go live in Italy. I'll just learn it. You're not a study abroad kid, meaning you're older, 30s, 40s, and you want to use a student visa. What our attorney says is it's misleading to think that you can just say, I want to study Italian, I'm going to go do that. There has to be a reason within your work. Do you work in international business? Do you work in a fine art gallery that coming here and studying art would be beneficial to your career? There has to be a logical reason, and it can't be because I want to go eat pasta for a year. It doesn't always qualify. You can try, but you may not get it because you have to go through a process with the consulate. So here's the overall process. First, you determine which visa is right for you. Then you have to get all the documentation and things required, proof of income, proof of housing, proof of travel. When we applied for a visa, we had to already have a place to live for 1 year, which means we had to sign a contract, put down deposits and all of that. And we had to book our airline tickets. So we had to have that in order to even apply for the visa. So you have to be very serious. This is not like, I'll just see if it works out. You've got to be serious because you have to have proof. So when you're doing this process, you have to really look at all the components of the different visas to find the one that you truly think you qualify for. So the student visa, like I said, this is for someone who wants to come. There's a term. So if your student classes are 8 months, that's the term of your visa. You can't come and do 3 months in an Italian class, but stay a year. It doesn't work like that. It is literally tied to the school term that you are going. Know that in advance. And are there ways to work through that system? Sure. How does it apply to your job? How does it apply to what you're doing? Give them a reason to approve it. That's what they want to know. By the way, you cannot work on a student visa. So you have to have enough income to support yourself for the period of time, the duration you would be a student in Italy. That's the first one. Second one is electoral residency visa. This is like a retirement visa. This is for people who have a passive income coming in that they do not need to work. You can't work on the electoral residency visa. You have to show and prove that you have a sufficient income for each member of your family that's coming in a passive way that doesn't require you. This could be a million different things. This could be that you own a business, but you're not in the day-to-day of running it. Maybe you're a founder, but you have a CFO and a C-suite managing it, and you don't really do anything, but you have enough passive income coming in to support yourself and all of that. That's what the electoral residency visa is. There are many nuances of this visa, and we have friends that are here on this visa because they've built companies, sold companies, created income streams, and they're here. And there's many of our friends are on the electoral residency visa, but you cannot work while you're in Italy on this visa. So that's that one. There are 2 work visas. This is a big question that you get, Rob, in social media, is how do you find work? You do not say, I want to move to Italy with the intention of finding work. If you go to the consulate and say, I want to move to Italy, it looks really nice over there. The pasta, the wine, the countryside, the people, the community. Rob's been talking it up. It looks beautiful, but I need a job. You will get denied. You do not come to Italy for work. I got to say it's super clear because people think that they can just come get a job. It's not how it works.
If you really think about it, it makes perfect sense because every country you have unemployed people. So why would they allow people from other countries to come in to work that potentially could take jobs away from the people within their own country that need it. So it's not illogical. It makes perfect sense. I get it. You love Italy and you'd like to be able to love Italy and have them give you a job, but it's not going to happen. But let's just take it off the list.
So there are multiple types of work visas that can be very complicated to apply for. So I would definitely recommend speaking to an attorney if you are in this lane. But there are certain professionals, I think, that can qualify for visas that come and get hired by a company. Let's say you're a surgeon or you have some sort of professional degree that would bring you here, a teacher, a lot of university professors, things like that, where you have a specialty and you're coming and you're doing something here with it with an Italian company or maybe an American company abroad. Rob, you just were a guest lecturer at FSU. And there are professors there, obviously from America. There are people that can qualify and get a job coming to Italy in that professional category. The other thing is there are self-employment visas that are available, but they're complicated. It's not as easy as I own my own business, I want to go live in Italy. It's not that simple. And unfortunately, I was even shown an article the other day from someone, an attorney that wants you to hire him to apply for a self-employment visa, and he made it seem so easy to get. And they're really not. There are really specific ways to qualify for a self-employment visa in Italy, and it can be more complicated. So if this is something you're truly interested in, yes, you can get the course and hear what our attorney has to say about it. You can reach out to an attorney and get clarity on it. But there are versions there. Then there's the family visa. You actually have a lot of people, Rob, that fall in this category where they're married to an Italian but live in the US and they want to relocate back to Italy. There is still a visa process for that person, and it's a family visa, so there's a visa process for them. And then there's a citizenship application visa. This is for someone who, like Rob, is in the process of reclaiming his citizenship through his ancestors. His grandparents and great-grandparents are from Naples, and we're in the midst of going through this kind of long process to reclaim citizenship and get Italian passports through family ancestral heritage. While you're in that process and you've submitted an application, you can apply for a visa to stay, but that visa only grants you time, I believe, until they made a decision in your case. There's nuances with that as well. So I don't want to discourage you from thinking you can move to Italy. There's many ways that you can move to Italy. You just want to be really clear about the options that are available and what your specific situation is. Like for Rob and I, when we initially had this idea to move to Italy or spend some sort of long-term time in Italy, we didn't know the visa process. We didn't know what we needed. And we didn't know citizenship was even an option through family ancestors. We didn't know what we didn't know. And so we just thought we'd pick up and move here and we'd figure it out. But there are visa options for specific circumstances packed into these, so you've got to figure it out. Also, maybe you don't qualify for one of these visas now, but maybe you can build a company, and I know that I make that sound so easy, but build some sort of passive income that would eventually allow you to qualify, let's say, for the electoral residency visa, or maybe there's a nuance to the self-employment visa that you'd qualify for. So you really want to vet these out before you make your decision and make your appointment with the consulate, because there are a lot of people that will just make an appointment with their local consulate. That's worth noting too. You have to apply at your consulate in the place you live. So when we were in Los Angeles County, we had to apply at the Los Angeles consulate. If you're in the Southeast, like when we lived in Atlanta, we would have to have applied at the Miami consulate. If you're in New England, there's a Boston consulate, there's a New York consulate, San Francisco. They're scattered around, so you have to find the consulate that is for your district and apply there. But a lot of people just show up at the consulate and they're like, here's all my documents, and they don't qualify and they get denied. So you want to really, truly be prepared with every document to support the case on why and how you can support yourself moving to Italy.
All right. And then the last piece we're going to cover here today is actually going to the consulate after you've filled out your paperwork for the visa. Then you will be interviewed by the consigliere, like The Godfather. It's a dark room with mahogany walls, a guy with a cigar, and he says, I try to get out and they pull me back in. Okay, let's talk about that process. I will give you my 2 cents and then Kim will tell me where I'm wrong here. Think what the most important thing to know is to not look very American when you go in there. Don't wear a backwards baseball cap. Don't wear flip-flops. Don't be entitled. Not that every American is entitled, but like you may think, oh God, I fit completely. I got a company. I don't really need to run it. I have a manager running it. We make $10 million a year. I don't need to work there. I'm a shoo-in. And you may show up with that attitude and they may say, yeah, you're not shooing into this country. So don't go in there with any kind of airs or attitude or elitistness at all. If you have a child, as we did when you're going in there, not a bad idea to put an I Love Italy t-shirt on her. Not a bad idea to have the child make a picture of living in Italy and sharing the excitement that the family has about moving there. Not a bad idea that when you're being interviewed and there are questions being asked, that you select the right member of your family to be able to answer the machine gun of questions that are coming in. Thank God I have my wife, because I'm a shit show when it comes to details and numbers. It's not my strong suit. I put on my daddy hat and I chase Sophia around the consulate so mommy can sit at the adult table and have adult conversation. And I play school with the kid. Choose who's going to be the one that's going to be the primary one that answers the questions. Don't be like looking at each other going, how much money do we make? You know what I mean? Know in advance what you're doing.
That was all perfect, Rob, honestly, because what people don't realize with going to a consulate is in the US, if you're going to get a passport, you go to the post office and you have to fill out the application. You got to take the picture and you submit the application. She stamps the date you did it and then she processes it. You're getting a passport. Unless there's some really crazy reason, like you applied for it, you're getting it. And the person you're dealing with is the government employee that's just going through the motions of processing what you need. That is not the case when you're going to the consulate for an interview. Pretend this is getting into college and you're going for a college interview. The person in front of you, you could have straight A's. You could have done all the community service. You could have done all of the extracurriculars under the sun. But if you show up like an a-hole in a college interview, they have the right to say, not today. You're not getting in. So I want you to pretend this person is there to vet you in the same way a college would vet somebody. And it's slightly subjective. Yes, there are standards and there's protocol, but there's also a degree of questioning that they can have and they can make a subjective decision. And so going in, being who you would show up in Italy to be. Like, we love this country. We want to be a part of the community. We want to support the community. We want to support the people. We want to enjoy and laugh with the barista and the butcher in the same way that we would our best friends. Like, you want to show up as the person that you will be in this country. Like Rob said, if you walk in with this demand of everything's here, I qualify, give it to me now, you may not get what you want. Go in the same way you would for a college interview. Kind, respectful, show the documents you have, answer the questions honestly and fully. And you're making a case of why you would want to move your family to Italy.
Here's the way I would look at it. You know, when you meet somebody and you're like looking at them going, do I want to be friends with this person?
Yeah.
And you're just thin slicing it, they're doing the same. They're making a judgment call. They're saying, do I think this person would be an added value in Italy?
Yes.
All right. So if you are interested in our How to Move to Italy course, there's a link somewhere on the bottom that you can click and you can get access to it. So hopefully this gave you a nice little thumbnail overview sketch, a little sneak peek. That's it, everybody. Have a great week and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody, if you've ever thought about coming to hang out with Kim and I on one of our next Rob and Kim Italia events and you want to learn more, just click the Rob and Kim Italia link in the show notes and add your name and email, and we'll send you all the details as soon as they're available. We are obsessed with this country and how it affects you, and we want to share that magic of culture, food, wine, art, architecture, and some secret magic moments that we've cooked up with you. So be sure to add your name because these events sell out quickly.